start, but we hit the road.
We're in trances, going off to different places, different planets. Watch your aura pass me by, losing balance. What if we run out of time and second chances? Empty-handed. You like the fast life, you like to drive, get down dirty, act like the bad guy. You want some love, you like when you feel like
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry for being a couple minutes late, everybody. As always, it's ECM here with your daily dose of Resistance Live. I'm really glad you guys are here today. For our visually challenged viewers today, I'm actually wearing a white tank top with a black jacket over top, and my hair is pulled back, and I am a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty blonde-haired woman, and I'm in front of a countertop and some floating shelves and some other things in my brand new apartment. I'm glad you guys are here. Welcome. Okay, so lots of speculation this morning on the feed about various things that are happening inside the Trump campaign related to the issue of Kamala Harris's obvious and incredible momentum at this moment in time. We talked yesterday, for those who are interested in this issue, because this question came up many, many, many times, about the fact that there are now very obvious second thoughts about J.D. Vance as the vice presidential nominee. And I'm not going to repeat everything that I said yesterday, but I do want to say that those rumors have only accelerated since yesterday, and they're sort of stuck with him at this point. You know, the nomination is in. The vote has taken place with their electors, and, you know, you make your choices. I do think, though, that we have started to see a real emergence from the Trump campaign of all the indications of how terrified they truly are. Yesterday, there was a poll, and you all know how I feel about polls and how unreliable they are. And I said all of that yesterday also. But for what it's worth, there was a poll yesterday showing that for the first time, Kamala Harris is up against Trump. The Democrats are up against Trump in a more standard poll. And I just have to say again, I don't trust polling in this country as far as I can throw it at this moment in time. But for what it's worth, Harris is beating Trump now in a major nationwide poll. And that in and of itself, I think, has created a lot of fear inside the Trump campaign. And then on top of it, we have Kamala Harris breaking through all fundraising records. We have incredible mobilization across a multitude of communities right now on behalf of Kamala Harris. More on that in a minute. And we're seeing just this insane momentum. We are, yes, I love this comment here in the feed. We are not going back. We are 100% not going back. And the speech that Kamala Harris gave yesterday, that seems to be the theme that is emerging here. You know, we are not going back to the dark ages, and we are not going back to the era of Trump. And I honestly am just so excited about this energy, but they're terrified, and they should be at this moment in time. So I want to warn everyone again that already we are seeing an enormous amount of disinformation uptick in relation to Kamala Harris. I want to point out to everyone here again, because again, on the question feed on Patreon this morning, sorry, I'm like laptop camera, on the Patreon feed this morning again, and reminder, you want to ask me questions for several hours before every broadcast. You can become a paid subscriber at patreon.com/resistance-live for as little as $5 a month, which is just 20 cents a broadcast. Very, very good deal. And subscriptions go up from there. I do want to remind you all that one of the things that we are seeing here is this incredible uptick in false information. And one of the questions that I got asked multiple times this morning was about this claim that Kamala Harris jailed 1,500 Black men for weed. Now, I talked about this again yesterday, but I'm going to reiterate it today because there were so many questions about it on the broadcast feed over on Patreon, okay? That is a lie. It is a calculated disinformation campaign that started with Tulsi Gabbard's campaign all the way back in 2020, okay? Agence France Presse has already done a huge piece debunking this. Again, I have linked that on my threads this morning as well. AP is now doing a big series of debunking of various claims that have been made against Kamala Harris that are false, all right? So again, you got to be really careful about where you get your information right now, because the Trump campaign and people on the far right are going to throw all sorts of nonsense out there to try to divide Democrats. That one is very much designed to split particularly Black men off from supporting Kamala Harris. All right. But there's other efforts that are underway right now also. And one of the things that is such an indication of how the Trump team is terrified of what has just happened is that the degree of sexist and racist attacks have really only amplified since we first started talking about them on Sunday. I just have to warn you all, there were some other commentators saying this last night on Threads. The high of the last few days and where we are and the momentum of this campaign is awesome. But I also want everyone to remember that this is the beginning of a marathon. We've got another 104 days to go. It is going to get very ugly. And we all need to steel ourselves at this point for the fact that the slog of the work that lies ahead of us will include some bad days. It's going to include days where horrible things are said about our candidate, where we are facing down rancid, awful, racist and misogynistic attacks. And to be honest, as I've said repeatedly, part of our job here is to debunk those at every step. And to make sure that we're calling them out whenever we see them. But I do want people to be aware that the really good news about the uptick in that, the silver lining in that at the moment, is that it is so obvious that they have nothing to attack her on, save her gender and her race. There is literally nothing out there in her background that they can point to that is an attackable feature of her leadership. And so they are either making things up or amplifying disinformation campaigns, or they are literally just attacking her on the basis of otherism. And again, it is going to get very gross. It is already very gross, and it's going to get even uglier. I want everyone to be prepared for that. And simultaneously, I want you to understand that if that's all they've got nothing. Because the end result of them doing that is going to be a further entrenchment of the Democratic base in the need to elect Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States. So it's incredibly, incredibly important that we call this out, that we don't ignore it, that we understand what racist dog whistles sound like, that we understand when sexism is being weaponized, that we take every opportunity to push back against it as hard as possible, because apart from anything else, there are still some people out there, a couple of you are married to them, unfortunately, on the Patreon feed, who seem to think that we're not ready to elect a Black woman as the president of the United States. And again, I have to say, the ultimate pushback to that at the moment is she's electable if we elect her. Like, we can get it done. If you don't think she's electable, just watch. So again, I want to encourage all of you to really get educated about how to do this, how to push back against the disinformation and the racism and the sexism that is going to be tossed in her direction, and to make sure that you're doing it routinely. Okay, that brings me to a very important point. We spent a lot of time over the last 3 days here talking about the importance of white women doing the work in this election. I want to just let all of you know that there is another event being hosted tonight by Surge, Standing Up for Racial Justice, for white women to learn how to push back against this sort of stuff in the context of the campaign. That event is linked on my threads. You can go find it. There is another event tomorrow night that is being hosted by Shannon Watts. I mentioned this yesterday. That is again an event for white women to stand up for Kamala Harris and to learn how to speak about these things in conjunction with other white people and white women, so that we debunk the underlying racism and the underlying internalized sexism that is already very present in our own communities. All right. So very key right now. If you don't understand how to do this, if you still have conservative friends, not going to judge you, except with like a little bit kind of like, if you want to learn how to talk to them about it, please attend one of these events, because it's really critical right now that we are doing this work, that we don't let this nonsense slide. All right. Like, again, I've said this over and over again. I'm going to say it again here. Please, this is not the moment where we can get away with doing, and we didn't get away with it in 2016, where we can excuse the things that we did in 2016 of like allowing people to just believe that like you can't elect a woman, or that the way a woman laughs disqualifies her, or the fact that she doesn't have children means she shouldn't hold office. Because, you know, if she had children, they would be saying the same thing, right? The fact that she's a stepmother isn't good enough. Doesn't mean she's a mom, right? The fact that she's kind of like been very ambitious her whole career. Ooh, like which man who's ever been elected to the presidency hasn't been ambitious? We have to find a way to push back on all of this, and to do it immediately, and to do it in our own communities. So like, white folks, we're up. And I really want to see everybody who is an audience member in this audience who is white attend one of these particular events, whether it's the Surge event tonight or the event being held by Shannon Watts tomorrow. Critical. Both of them are on my threads feed. You just have to scroll down a little bit. You can find the registration info for the Surge event, and the login for the Zoom for tomorrow night's event is going to be available very soon. All right. Okay, I know you all like it when I laugh. There is something I have to laugh about today because I've literally been laughing about it since yesterday, which is that members of the House GOP have introduced articles of impeachment against Kamala Harris. Again, you want an indication of how terrified they are of the current state of affairs? This is one. And the claim about this is that somehow the border crisis, allegedly, which doesn't exist anymore because, you know, like, not that it ever did. You all know my feelings about this. It's just like straight xenophobia and racism. But one of the things that I want people to understand is that, you know, again, I got to remind you all, the reason why Biden had to take executive order action at the border was because the Republicans demanded a border deal, negotiated it, and then Trump told them to walk away from it so that he would have something to run on. All right. Now, once again, a la impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas, they have invented articles of impeachment against Kamala Harris, claiming she is responsible for the quote unquote border crisis. Okay, this is the modern day version of caravans flooding the border whenever there's a major problem for the GOP. So she's not going to be impeached. I don't want anyone to worry about this. Again, this is going to go away like so fast. But again, it is a moment where we have to understand that they're literally like throwing all the worst spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And they're going to do outrageous things. And again, that is an indication of weakness on their part. It is not an indication of strength. And the likelihood of them succeeding on this is like zero. Okay. So again, when you see things like this, because there will be more between now and November, what I want you to think about is whether or not that information is reliable, whether or not it's actually going to lead to the conclusion that you are anxious about, what the prospect of it is in the context of threat as a political event. And please remember, right, that the more anxious and terrified they get, the worse their behavior is going to become. All right. And our job is to stay focused on electing Kamala Harris. I mean, I'm going to tell you all, you all know I've been using this gesture for a long time. It's like the old white men in the Republican Party and their, handmaidens are clinging on with the last scratches of their fingernails to their white supremacist power. And they know what's coming, right? Like, what's happened in the last 3 days is a very clear indication, not just of how the demographics of America have changed, but how the beliefs of what America can be have changed. And they truly do not want what is happening because they know it's the end of them. They know it's the end of their cycle of power, probably the end of that cycle of power that has existed in America for 500 years. We are in a watershed historic moment in this nation right now. And they're going to do a lot of insane things to try to maintain power. They're going to lie. Yes, there's going to be stuff after the election. They're going to contest the results, which is why we have to turn out in numbers too enormous to debate, right? And, I also want to just let you all know that Trump, when he's terrified, like any other malignant narcissist, is going to lash out in a number of ways. He will threaten violence. He will incite violence or attempt to. He will say things that are completely insane. He will appear to decompensate in public. Not that he isn't already, but it's going to get worse. All right. We have to be prepared for all of this. And again, part of the key here is to not allow ourselves to be derailed or distracted from the work, right? The work is electing Kamala Harris as the 47th president of the United States. That is the work. And whatever other nonsense they pull over here, we're going to stay nose to the grindstone, focused on mobilizing in our own communities, having those critical, important, deep canvassing conversations about why now is the time. And we're going to stay focused. Like, that's what we have to do. There's no other option. Because I'm just going to remind you all, even though hope is like a great drug right now, the looming threat of fascism is like right there. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just like, recessed a little bit into the nearby corner. All right. We are in a place where we cannot discount the threat and we cannot become complacent. We all have an obligation right now to mobilize in our own communities and where we live. And I'm going to remind you all, like I've said this for months now, do not neglect the reverse coattails phenomenon. Okay. Go out and canvass, go out and campaign for local Democratic candidates. Yes, of course, you can do that work for the Harris campaign as well. But I'm just going to say, you do the work for the Democratic candidate for your local school board. You get people mobilized to vote for that person. You're going to get people mobilized to vote for Democrats up and down the ballot. And also, again, this is going to be a mantra of mine between now and November. Do not forget that if we do not give President Harris a Senate with filibuster busting senators in it, willing to exercise the nuclear option to end the filibuster rule, and if we don't give her the House, none of what we want can come to pass. So do not neglect those down ballot races. Make sure that wherever you live, you are fighting for Democratic representatives in the House, for Democratic senators who will bust the filibuster. Make sure that on your local level, you're not neglecting your state representatives and your state senators and the attorney general of your state who's going to certify the election results. Don't neglect your gubernatorial races because your governor's going to have some say over how votes are counted. Okay, please make sure that you are doing the work on every level, not just on the national level, but also locally and statewide where you live. Every single election matters this year. Every single election is about preserving democracy. So make sure that you are doing your part. Okay. Lots of speculation again this morning, third day in a row, about the vice presidential potential candidates for Harris. I will tell you that, there were some questions this morning about Josh Shapiro. There were some questions this morning about Mark Kelly. There were some questions about other governors. Okay. I will tell you that I happen to agree with other folks who are saying that nominating a centrist vice presidential candidate right now will tamper down some of the excitement about Harris among millennials and Gen Z. Personally, you all know my feelings on this. I would like her to pick a candidate that amplifies the forward-looking nature of her candidacy rather than dials it down. All right. And to me, what that means is it's got to be a nominee who either has broken barriers in their own right, a la Pete Buttigieg. He wasn't on the list yesterday, but he's on the list this morning in terms of who they've asked for information from. Maybe somebody like Mark Kelly, because I'll tell you why. Gabby Giffords, his wife, is at the forefront of the gun violence prevention movement. Having her as the second lady of the nation and having Mark Kelly as her husband as the vice president, given his affiliation with gun violence prevention as her husband, would be a huge check mark for Gen Z and millennials. All right. I also just want to point out that we don't, Josh Shapiro, and again, I'm just going to say this, I'm like a Pennsylvania native. I grew up there. My family lives in Pennsylvania for the most part. I love Josh Shapiro. I am friends with his daughter. He is an incredible governor. I do not want to see another gubernatorial race in Pennsylvania until the next round of his election. All right. I am not in favor of Josh Shapiro being the vice presidential nominee. If it happens, we'll get behind it, but I don't think this is his time. Okay. I don't think given the position of the totality of where we sit. Okay. I think we need Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. And I think an option like Mark Kelly or Pete Buttigieg is a much better choice. Okay. If Pete Buttigieg is not on the list, my bet is it will be Mark Kelly. All right. But again, and I know Andy Beshear is on there, but I'm just going to say this as well. Kentucky needs Andy Beshear as a governor. Okay. That was an incredibly hard fought gubernatorial race when he won it. And we do not want to throw Kentucky back up into the air as a potentially red run state. All right. So there's lots of reasons why we need to think through very carefully. And I'm sure that the Kamala Harris campaign is doing this, all the metrics that are in play when she chooses a vice presidential nominee. All right. It's not just about who's the best fit for the ticket. It's about the entire national gamesmanship, fundamentally, of who's controlling which house in which state, and rather who's controlling which government in which state, and what that means for how electoral votes are going to be counted, among other things. All right. There's a whole realm here. It is not going to be Beto O'Rourke. People keep asking me about this. Beto O'Rourke lost a number of elections in a row. I'm just telling you right now, Beto O'Rourke cannot deliver Texas. It will not be Beto O'Rourke. He's not even on the list of people that she's considering. All right. So again, I want people to understand that, whoever she chooses, we're going to be 100% behind that ticket. But I do think there is a major, major reason to choose a figure like Pete Buttigieg, who will shatter another glass ceiling and potentially deliver Michigan and Indiana, or to choose someone like Mark Kelly, who will deliver Arizona, where Katie Hobbs would replace him with a Democratic candidate for Senate, right? Where it's a border state and he has very progressive thoughts about border issues, where his wife is a gun violence survivor. There's all sorts of reasons why this wouldn't be why that would be a good choice as well. So we will see. All right, we will see. But I want everybody to also understand, we have a really good bench. That's the good news about being Democrats, right? We have a huge bench of potential vice presidential nominees here. And, I trust Kamala Harris to make the right decision. And I truly hope she picks somebody who's progressive, because we need it badly. We need to continue this momentum and this hope and this forward-looking movement toward the future. And I just have to say this, for anybody who's saying it's going to be a straight white man, just hold on. Because you know what? I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. It's a revolutionary moment. All right. And, you know, like a Buttigieg ticket, my Lord. I mean, like you couldn't stop that ticket with a freight train. All right. So let's just see what happens. All right. Let's just see what happens. All right. Let's see what else. Yes, another issue on the front of Trump running scared, which I meant to talk about at the top of the broadcast, is the Trump's team has filed a Federal Election Commission complaint this morning, speaking of like pathetic gestures, against the Biden-Harris campaign, claiming that Kamala Harris should not have access to the funds that she does have access to because she was named as a part of that ticket, and that she should be barred from using the Biden war chest. Now, I'm just going to say something to all of you. Like, it's nonsense. And it shouldn't go anywhere. But I'm also just going to say this, okay? Even if it did, we really don't have anything to worry about. Because, by the way, Kamala Harris has raised more money than any presidential candidate in history in the last 3 days. All right? Like, every record has been shattered. Okay? We're well above, like, I think the last time I looked, it was like $130 million in donations since Sunday. That's insane. Right? Like, even if the worst case scenario were to happen, which is not going to, which is the FEC ruled that she couldn't have access to those funds, we're not in trouble. Like, I'm not worried. I'm not worried. All right. So again, oh, look, I get to block somebody and I don't even have my troll bell again, but you know what? It's just so much fun. Bye. I want to just tell everyone not to worry about this. All right. Because fundamentally, we've seen exactly what's going on here and the momentum that's forward facing. And the money for the Harris campaign combined with the money from the PAC is like $250 million. Like, we're good. We're good. All right. And again, this is like the Trump team just flailing. And from the standpoint of, you know, what that says, it says that they are running scared and they're terrified. Okay. Somebody asked me a question about Elon Musk this morning. Who, you know, I don't like to talk about because he's like just such a nightmare fascist. But yesterday he did make an announcement that he was withdrawing his $45 million a month of support to the Trump campaign. Okay. I have to point out, this doesn't mean that Musk is any less of a fascist, right? He always has been this person. It's who he always will be. He gave an incredibly transphobic interview yesterday about how essentially his trans daughter is dead to him. Horrifying, disgusting, unacceptable, like unfathomable to me, right? The fact that he withdrew this money is actually probably more of an indication of the fact that he sees a losing ticket in Trump and Vance than it is of anything else, all right? And I will just tell you that, like, there is no reason to be surprised by this, okay? Again, I got to point out, in addition to being a fascist, Elon Musk is a malignant narcissist, just like Donald Trump. He doesn't want to show any sign of weakness. He doesn't want to be affiliated with a losing ticket. Okay, all of this makes sense. All of it makes sense. And if you just accept that Elon Musk is a fascist running a disinformation platform, none of it will be surprising. All right. Okay. Final thoughts for today that I just want to kind of like leave everyone with. I know that many of you have signed up already to try to volunteer with the Harris campaign. And I know that there are a lot of text banking and phone banking events for a lot of us where we live that have been so flooded since Sunday that they're like, come back August 1st. Okay, that's fine if that's where you live. But I'm just going to tell you all, please don't stop getting involved. All right. Like, the fact that they don't have enough staff to train people, the fact that they don't have enough bandwidth to text bank as many people as they want does not mean that that availability is not going to continuously be there. And I'm also just going to say something else. We all have an obligation right now, wherever we are, to be having these conversations with our friends and our neighbors and our family and our children and our grandchildren and our parents. Everybody that we know needs to understand why it is so important that we vote for Kamala Harris. So you can still be doing mobilization work in the form of deep canvassing, even if there isn't an event available in your area where you can get involved like today versus like tomorrow or next week. All right. But it doesn't let you off the hook. That's my big message, right? Like, as an organizer, I really want everybody to remember that, like, your energy and your time and your commitment to what we need to do between now and November is mandatory. It's not optional. It's not optional. All right. So again, I'm going to remind you all, mobilize.us, go look at it. Like, I looked at mine yesterday and literally there were like 15 events that I could participate in yesterday. All right. New events are being added every day. Don't stop volunteering. And again, I got to point out, you can text bank from your sofa. You can text bank from your dining room table. Like you can, and it's all through computer and you're not giving up your own phone number. If you've never done it, like please consider volunteering. If you live in a deep blue state, you can volunteer to text bank or phone bank into deep red states, into swing districts. Again, reminder, swing district is one organization that does that. Sister district is another, swing left rather, sister district is another. Again, these are all organizations that have very robust infrastructure to help people do the work of campaigning, fundamentally, to help volunteers do the work of getting out the vote. And, you know, again, it is going to be a marathon between now and November, and we've all got to get involved. All right. I will just tell you all I'm in a really good mood. I mean, I know sometimes people ask me that. I just personally think we're in a very solid place. I think that we are moving forward in a way that has the potential to be like revolutionary for the future of this country. And I have so much hope. I just have so much hope right now. It's really nice to have hope back. You're gone too. Bye. Every once in a while, we get these people on here who just think they can show up with homophobic nonsense. All right. I want my troll bell back because I really miss like smacking it to ding it every single time I have to block one of these people. Okay. I really, truly want everybody to just like understand though, that hope is not the only thing we need. We actually need like legwork. We need, you know, the serious effort of door knocking and phone banking and text banking. We need the willingness to have hard conversations. Like all of that is a part of where we are right now, and donations, like all that too. Okay. I think that's it for today. I love you guys so much. Thanks to everybody who's here. Thanks so much for our Patreon subscribers. Again, you can become a paid subscriber to ask me questions over at patreon.com/resistancelive. And I also just want to remind everybody here that your thumbs up and your subscriptions here are great, but the thing that makes the most difference to me is whether or not you share this broadcast with other people in groups that you belong to, in your group chats, you know, in your community mobilization groups, so that, you know, you're getting the word out about how people can get involved and what the most key issues are to know about, how to combat disinformation, how to make sure you're media literate, like all of that, and the legal stuff, of course, like me, you know, like trial lawyer. It's really important that we all understand that. So, and that we all have like all that motivation and community to keep us going. So lots of love to all of you. I will catch you all here tomorrow, regular time. Grateful to all of you. And I will see you soon. Oh, and we're going to have an announcement about like timing for next week, probably tomorrow. For those of you who are Patreon members, there will be a progressive coffee hour this weekend, but it is going to be on Saturday morning. All right. So not Sunday, Saturday morning. So stay tuned to the Patreon feed for an announcement about that. All right. Catch you all soon. Have a great Wednesday, everybody. Bye.